I just thought I'd jump on and share a quick video with you on how we create the cloud sponged background, and I'm going to experiment using different tools to see what different kind of effects we get. So I've covered up my background, you can't see it very well here, but I did share it in the Pinkies group. So I've got 3 different sets of tools. I've got brushes, I bought these from Amazon, sponges that we sell that I've just simply cut in half, and daubers. My daubers are already inked, but if you rub it, you can see it's very light blue, and that one is very neutral, so I'm going to use that as my grey one. I've used this pretty label punch, and all I've done is punch out 2 in rough card, and I'm going to use that as my cloud template just because it looks like the top of it looks like clouds. Can always turn it that way too. And then the 2 inks I used were Balmy Blue and Smoky Slate. Now I think it's really important, I'll start with sponge, that you just start with a light touch. Can always add more ink, you can't take the ink off, so it's better to start lighter. And what I found was I'm a bit worried about doing a tutorial because I'm not really sure how to do it myself, or maybe by the time we get over to this one it'll be amazing. So I started at the bottom, I just got my punch and positioned it. Try not to be too uniform, try not to keep it always straight, and try not to keep it even, so like doing one here and then one here and one here and one here, because clouds aren't like that. Try and randomize it up and build on it. So I think what made mine look I think what made me happy with my background is I added the 2 colours, which I think added a bit of shade and definition and just made it look a bit more 3D and realistic. So we're going to start off with the gently tapping the Balmy Blue. If I dab that on here, you can barely see a bit of inks coming off, but remember we're starting off light. So always tap it off here first with this tool and with this tool, because what you'll find is if you go straight onto the paper, you'll get an intense dob of ink and then it will spread out. And we don't want that. We want to just keep it fuzzy and light. So if I just move around the punch shape, it might not look like anything, and sometimes it doesn't look like anything, and you think, have I even got anything on there? We'll move it away and see if there's anything showing, any gradient. There's not, so I need a bit more ink. I'm dabbing it a few more times. You can see I've got a bit more ink there, and I'm starting on the punch shape and moving outwards. That's what I'm trying to do. I can see I've laid down a bit of colour there. And the more I go over it, the more colour I will lay down until I've used all the ink up on the sponge. Now, before I move this piece, I'm going to grab a little bit of the grey, dab it off, and just add a little bit of the grey just around the edge of the punch piece. So there, I'll move it away. We've got a nice defined sort of cloud shape and a blue sky background. It's more important, it's not often you see a sky filled with clouds. You want more of the blue sky background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over here. Try not to try and keep within the shape within the edges of your lines. Try and overlap so that you haven't got this, everything's constrained within the edges. Now I'm going to go back to the blue. I'm probably going to get braver and darker as I move up. So what I'm going to do now is start on my punched piece and move out, but I'm going to try and move out a bit further. I think that's what gives a really nice sky effect. Is sometimes I'm using circles, sometimes I'm using strokes. Find your way. So if I just add more blue, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the grey and go just around the edge of the punch shape with the grey. It may be too subtle. Oh, that's okay. Now I am going to go in a bit harder with the grey. It is quite a light grey, so if you find the colours aren't right, you could use different colour inks. Let's see what that looks like. It's definitely added a bit more grey. So that suddenly makes that look really subtle, but that's okay. So I'm going to position that here now, pick up the blue and just be building. Remember, go wide with the blue. What I mean by that is, you know, build your sky. Don't have it filled with clouds unless you're trying to create a really stormy sky, which would be filled with clouds maybe. I've gone a bit heavy on the ink there, but you know, it's a work in progress. I would say stick whatever it is you want to stick on top of that if you don't like that. So keep building. So this is just using the standard Stampin' Up sponges, which I find give a more subtle effect than the daubers, which I think you might see in a minute. So let's build up a bit of blue, working in a circular motion again. Build up a bit of blue and add a little bit of grey, and then move it across. Now obviously I've coloured that blue, so white isn't going to show up very well. So if I come just above where I did my blue sky, and come out here, I'm not going to spread quite so far this time, and I'm going to move this one over here and spread. I'm not re-inking, I'm just using the ink that's left. And this was how I created mine. I did all the blue, and then I went back and added the grey. Now you can use this part of the punch if you wanted to create a different shape of cloud. Don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So don't be frightened to use different parts of the punched image to get different shapes of cloud. And then I would say go back in, and where you wanted to, maybe that would be a good place to add a bit of grey. Let's see what that looks like. Here's just experiment. We do it once. We make a card with a cloud background, and we expect it to be perfect, and we expect it to look exactly like we've seen or want it to look the very first time. If you did a whole sheet, then what you could do is just cut out the section that looks the best for you. And I hope that you can see, obviously you have to anchor your paper down, so I'm trying to anchor it with the punch and the paper. I hope that you can see, just adding subtle colour, we've got a nice sponged background. I'm not happy with that bit there, but that's okay. That's where I would be sticking my balloons if that were this card. So that's with the sponges. Now we're going to do the same again. Now I could use this, but I'm going to use a new one just because I don't want to spread ink. I'm going to use daubers this time. So this is my blue dauber. Now what you'll find is when you dab it in your ink pad, it picks up a more intense ink. It's a harder surface area, so it's not got as much blend in it. So as you can see, we're going darker. So I would recommend you really tap lightly and go really lightly. So I'm trying to just skim the edge of this punch. I'm not trying to go mad and press hard. I'm trying to build up a nice, gentle colour. Can you see that? I haven't gone mad by pressing super hard, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit more ink, dab it off, and I'm going to go over here. And I think what I'm going to do is add the grey after. I'll experiment halfway up in a minute. So I'm going to add a bit more blue, moving out from the punch shape. There we go. Just really gentle. This is quite an intense blue, the balmy blue. You could use a lighter colour blue if you wanted to. Maybe pool party, but maybe the tone of that isn't the right blue. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a bit greeny. And maybe just use grey. In fact, let's do that. Let's spread up a bit of colour. Try not to be too heavy-handed. Could even use a combination of daubers and sponges. I'm going to pick up the grey now, dab a bit of grey, and then just try. And you will get definitely a more defined line with a dauber. So if I'm doing that around my punch shape, I think what you'll see is we get a much more defined line, which I quite like the difference between the blue and the grey. Try not to go round the edges of the punch, because what you'll end up with is it's catching the corner where it looks much more natural when it's just the top part. So let's bring in a bit of blue. If I come to here, if I come like this, maybe pick up my blue, just make sure you can see that. Oh, I've gone a bit dark there. I'm going to spread out the blue a bit. Remember, I don't want it all to be cloud. I want it to be more blue sky as well as clouds. Add a little bit of a grey gradient around the edge of there, but not following around the edge. I think it just gives it a bit of dimension. I'm going to try and add a bit more blue coming off there. Let's have a think. So if I go here, it's just trial and error. There's no right or wrong way. That's quite intense, that blue. So let's go super gentle, circular motions. I think the reason I like using circular motions, it gives it a random feeling rather than strokes would make you feel, you might actually see the stroke lines. So this is giving it a much more gentle, random, and clouds are circle sort of shapes, aren't they? I might try and add a bit of grey here. See what that looks like. Just trial and error, people, trial and error. That's added a bit of definition there, which is quite nice. That's bothering me slightly. I don't know, I could go over that with blue maybe. Try and bring out the grey. Or I'm just going to make it more blue, who knows. But adding more blue is okay too, is going darker on the blue. You could go super light with the blue and then add a darker, even a different shade of blue. Don't forget sunsets, you could have pinks and oranges to really add a pretty background if you wanted to. Add a bit of grey there. And then you could even add like yellow cast for like the sun shining behind the clouds. Whatever you wish, experiment. It's supposed to be fun, this crafting lark, and I think we get so disheartened when we try something once and think, oh, it didn't work, why didn't it work, why is everybody else can do it better than I can? And it's not that, it's just they've practiced more and they've done it more times, that's all. So I'm not re-inking, I'm just using the ink that's left on my dauber, and that is probably my preferred column as opposed to the sponge. And I'm hoping what I'm going to do now is persuade you not to buy these. Sometimes I treat myself to other supplies. It looks like there's a colour on the brush. Just rub it first and make sure that no colour's coming off. I think you can see that I've used that for blue. There is a bit of blue on there, so I'm not really going to fill that up. So I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to start here and build up, brush. You'll find this is more subtle. Did you notice I haven't had to tap it on here to dispel the ink? It's just like a much more subtle brushed effect. They're really soft and they're quite firm. There's lots of bristles. So you'll find it just gives a nice soft edge. So now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to tap a bit more ink. Just make sure I hadn't picked up too much, just because you'll find each thing picks up different amounts of ink. So if you're moving between tools, you'll need to just refresh your memory as to how much ink you need to add each time. So I'm building up a bit of colour here. I need a bit down here, don't I? If I put that there and then I just go subtly, just really subtle, I'm not adding a lot of colour. Just be warned, you will get that colour fingernail. See, I've got a lovely blue fingernail. I'm going to add a bit of grey. Let's have a little look at that. It's quite nice. And then if I go, about if I try a different angle, I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but we'll give it a try. I think mustn't be too uniform. We mustn't be evenly spaced. We mustn't be constrained within the lines, and then you'll get a much more natural effect. I think that looks good actually, because it just means that the clouds are different shape rather than the clouds all being the same shape. So let's go in here, tapping in the blue, and I'm going to try and build up the page. Over the white, and I might see if I can position that back on and add a bit of grey. frightened of adding too much grey, so I'm just trying to be really subtle with the grey. I feel like that needs something here. Maybe if I just add grey, let's see what happens. That looks good. I like that. So again, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Just experiment. Every time will look different. And now I'm just going to finish off this top bit. So I go back to my blue one. If I just add it here. So sometimes go up and create blue and sometimes don't. Don't be uniform, I think. So when you're creating something random, be random. See what that looks like. And the beautiful thing is you can always come back in and add a bit more. A bit more across here, I think. I'm not re-inking. I'm I'm pressing hard with these brushes. You can use your finger on the top for a bit more defined, a bit more definition, just a bit harder. But as you can see, if I'm just really not inking, but just pressing and just getting a little bit more graduation on top of, so this was one cloud, I'm now adding a little bit of subtle colour, and it's just making it a little bit more defined, a bit more 3D. So this definitely is a sunny day. This one's got a few darker spots in it, which I like, and I think that one's my least favourite, which I thought I would like. I think part of the reason it's my least favourite is I've gone around the punch. So didn't take long to do a whole sheet. I could actually have 3 different backgrounds done, even with my horrible Sharpie work on there. And if you wanted to, I'll show you how if I add a bit of grey to this, it changes the feel of it. So if I'm only adding grey, and just being a bit more defined with the grey, it's going to make it feel a little more stormy. I'm just adding a bit of grey there. Go on, get me, getting experimental. I hadn't ever done a background. Well, I have done backgrounds before, cloud backgrounds, but I hadn't done one like the one I shared yesterday. So while we have this extra time, it's just good to try new things and not give up and not think, oh no, that's awful. I can't do that. I don't want to hear the words, I can't. I want to hear the words, I will get better. So I quite like that little grey cast that is being given with the just a bit of the grey ink. That one is Smoky Slate, I believe. Yeah, Smoky Slate and Balmy Blue. And I think we've got a nice combination of backgrounds. I think I've probably persuaded you not to buy these. I would encourage you to buy these. And the reason I would encourage you to do that is it'll help you reach your quarterly minimums. It will help you earn an income. This will only help Mr. Amazon earn an income. So I hope that's helpful. I'd love to see your efforts if you give it a try. And yeah, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye. But as you can see, if I'm just really not inking, but just pressing and just getting a little bit more graduation on top of, so this was one cloud, I'm now adding a little bit of subtle colour, and it's just making it a little bit more defined.